All right. We have some people joining us. I'm loving to see some familiar names, guys. Welcome. So excited to have you all here. All right, we're going to get started here in just a couple minutes. Just let everybody get logged in before we get started. We have such a great topic today. I don't want anybody to miss a single second. All right. Hi, Ben. Looks like you have a question. If you have a question, Ben, go ahead and type it into the chat for me, and I'll make sure to answer if you have a question. Okay. We are going to go ahead and get started. Hold on, let me turn off my Teams in the background because it keeps beeping at me. Here we go. All right. Well, welcome each and every one of you to our webinar today. It's been a while since I've been able to do a webinar. I'm so excited to be back for our Shinn Group webinar with Thomas Berrington. He is just recently joined our team and has so many excited things to talk about. Our webinar today is Cloud Strategy or Cloud Storm. And today, Thomas is going to be talking to you about how builders can align systems, processes, data, and AI before your technology storm gets worse. We have been talking to so many different builders and hearing all the different things that everybody's trying to do. And it's interesting because everybody's trying to find the quick fix. And actually, a lot of times you have the answer right there in your own back pocket. So Thomas is going to talk to us today a little bit more about that. Thomas, welcome. Please introduce yourself and share a little bit about how you got into home building, how you got excited about technology, AI, data, and how you came to join us.
Well, great. Thank you so much for the introduction, Emma. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm always excited to talk technology and cloud strategy. So this is just right up my alley. Getting started in home building, I'm sure a lot of you, I've met most of the people on the call here. Started with French Brothers as a data analyst right out of college, right out of my MBA, and really came on as a data analyst and looking at ways to improve reporting as we started building out a more advanced reporting system that really surfaced a lot of the decision-making information that we needed to drive the business forward. We started really focusing on how else can technology help a business of French Brothers size and stature in terms of how spread out they were geographically, in terms of the markets they were operating in, and it really became the kind of the secret sauce for French Brothers to be able to operate when you're building in markets that have a geographical spread of about 6 hours. It's very difficult if you don't have a robust technology platform to feel like you have an understanding of what's going on company wide. So making sure to lean into technology and into integrations really allowed company leaders to grow their insights into the business and feel comfortable managing one division while they were 4 or 5 hours away, or even across country at different seminars and things like that. And as well as just improving the collaboration among team members. Our frontline were able to maintain their schedules and make sure that their managers and company leaders were seeing that. So it just really had a tremendous impact on what could be seen within the company and within the collaboration side of things. From there, obviously, over the years, just growing that, and now joining with Shinn, I'm thrilled to be able to work with other builders and see kind of all the different environments that builders are operating in. And while some of the challenges have some commonalities, everybody's in a different environment and everybody's got a different technology stack or different operating processes. So it's how do we develop a technology stack that works effectively for your business, and so that it's not the tail wagging the dog, right? You don't want your technology to be driving your business processes. Ultimately, you want to be finding technology that works for your business.
Absolutely. And that's so fantastic. We are so honored to have you part of our team and working with amazing builders like the ones we work with every single day. So welcome to our organization and welcome to the webinar. I know there was a couple questions we wanted to pass out to everybody in the audience today. If you guys would help us out and tell us a little bit about yourselves in the chat. We want to know where you guys are all joining us from today. I know I see some people all the way from, I have West Coast all the way to East Coast. So it's great to see I have somebody on each coast and somewhere in the middle. So please join us today and tell us where you're joining from. And then we'd also love to know, how big are you? How big is your organization? How many homes are you building? How many lives are you blessing every year? And then what is one way you want AI to help you in your business today? I know a lot of you have lofty goals with what you want to do with technology, and some of you guys are like, I don't even know. It's so overwhelming. There's so many different things, and I don't know where to start. So please share with us in the chat. I'll read some of it as we go through, and I'm going to go ahead and let Thomas get started as you guys are sharing a little bit about yourselves in the chat. Go ahead and take it away, Thomas.
Great. Thank you again. So, like I mentioned, the title of the session is really a question of, do you have a cloud strategy or do you have a cloud storm? You know, how do we identify the ways to tell the difference? And let's find a diagnostic that allows you to evaluate your company in real time and create a sequence for getting that fixed or creating that strategy. So let's dive right in. So here's where we're at as an industry. The average industry or the average enterprise not within the home building industry is running about 1,000 apps, software applications. Now, as a home builder, most of us are not running 1,000 applications, but builders in this room typically are between 20 and 80 different software platforms, especially once you include every estimating tool, every spreadsheet, every point solution, every separate Canva, Novico, all of the different platforms, and every individual license from Claude, from OpenAI to ChatGPT, all of those just continue to compound. And it ends up adding to a technology stack that is made up of about 80 different software platforms. And trying to get that integrated together becomes incredibly difficult. How did we get here? So obviously that wasn't on purpose. I think most people didn't sit down 5 years ago and go, hey, let's have a solution that's made up of 20 different licenses and 20 different software platforms. But ultimately, they were just trying to solve a problem. And when you're out looking to solve a single problem, you find the solution and you adopt that solution. Now, the issue is that the sales team may be looking for a singular solution to their problem, whereas purchasing is looking for a singular solution to their problem. What ultimately needs to happen is the organization needs to come together to find solutions that work for the organizations and not for individual departments. Because you end up adopting what I like to call the shiny object mentality, where there's not really any bad tools out there. Software developers are not developing poorly made software or applications. So they all work really well. The problem is they don't all work well together. So then it's, how do we develop a strategy of what is our ultimate goal and how do we build that out? We want a strategy. We don't want weather. We don't want a ton of clouds in our environment. So let me show you what I mean by that. And this is where early on I want to do this self-diagnostic and have you guys think about your organization, think where you're at in terms of your technology stack. These are the most common issues that I'm seeing when I'm talking to builders in terms of duplicated efforts within their technology stack. If your technology, if your organization is requiring every team member to have multiple logins and things that don't communicate directly, all of that adds complexity to getting processes completed. Same with the conflicting data. This is probably the most common one, and especially when you think about spreadsheets. Most builders are operating a ton of processes outside of their ERP system or outside of their work operating system, which causes all of this siloed data where we update one spreadsheet and it doesn't flow through to the next. So then it requires human intervention at a significantly higher payroll cost to be able to duplicate that data across multiple spreadsheets. Inevitably, if a person is out or they get behind, we end up with conflicting data. And like it says on this slide, sales can mean something different within the pipeline, within what accounting thinks have been sold, and then ultimately what construction has as closed homes. And all of that creates that inconsistent information. Same with moving through when we look at comma separated value files or Excel files as an integration, where we like to go, my platforms are integrated. All I have to do is export the data from one and then import it to the next. To me, I don't look at that as an integration. That still requires that manual effort. And ultimately, what we want to develop is solutions that remove that human intervention or remove that human from the process. We want that data to sync together where we can set it up. We update it in our ERP system and it pushes through to our CRM. Or we create a contact in our CRM and they automatically populate into our engagement application. So it's really building those integrations together. Typically, when I'm talking with IT departments, it comes down to those integration ticket backlogs and growing as we continue to add more and more of these systems. And as AI becomes more and more prevalent within builders, it's, well, I need to connect Claude to my Microsoft account, or I need to connect Perplexity into my Google Cloud or Gemini into Google. All of these connections require additional effort from your administrative team members and reduce the productivity of building homes. And then ultimately the renewal surprises. And I think this falls in when I'm talking with a lot of people in accounting. We are seeing the continual renewed licenses of platforms that either aren't being used or have been taken offline, and yet we just haven't removed that license. And it's increasing the G&A expenses for builders in an already tight market where we're striving for margin. Being able to consolidate the tech stock down to as efficient as possible really allows you to have an impactful or have an impact on that margin and on that bottom line. So, and then, how does this ultimately come down and affect the business, and what does it look like? Well, the three main points of impact are cycle time, margin, and headcount. And cycle time, like we talk about, if it's not a true data sync or not a true integration, well, our frontline people are left updating their schedules within Internet Toolkit or within their ERP system, and then following up that process with notifying the sales team or notifying warranty team that the home has been complete through an email. And then that team then updates it onto their spreadsheet to know that they should be tracking that home. All of those handoffs cost time and reduce that productivity. So it's, as we check off one, how do we move that data to notify the rest of the team so that everybody's tracking the same information? We're all looking at a singular place for that single source of truth. Again, like I'd mentioned on the last slide, margin erosion, just from license costs, just from duplicate efforts. How many people have numerous project management tools or are subscribing to Visio and Canva and Lucid Charts and a lot of different applications that require significant capital to keep them licensed. And yet we're only using 10% of the functionality of one of them. And the other two, we simply haven't canceled our licenses. All of those are costing margin. And particularly in the market today, we need to protect that margin. And again, with the human intervention of moving data around in those processes, most businesses have gone, we're getting behind on reporting, or I simply can't keep up with all of the data moving around. We need to hire an additional purchasing agent or a assistant builder or accounting folks, whatever it is. Inevitably that adds to that payroll cost and headcount, which when compared to technology in volatile times as markets shift become incredibly difficult to plan and to forecast going forward. There's also higher costs to reduce headcount than there is in simply ending licenses, as they tend to be on a month-to-month basis. So it's how do we make the business as efficient as possible and allow us to pivot? If markets contract, we can reduce licenses far more effectively than we can try and go through a reduction in workforce. If the markets increase and as we start seeing rates come down and markets pick up, well, it's significantly easier to adopt more technology and to have that scale up faster than trying to hire and go through an increase in your workforce with it while still maintaining culture and still maintaining a great work environment. So that's really where we're looking at how technology can benefit in these three areas. And I don't want this to feel theoretical. I want to show proof into what we've been able to accomplish just in working with builders in the past. Like I said, my past with French Brothers, we were building about 150 and had grown to a 200 homes per year builder. And in that time, not only did we not have new hires, we were actually able to reduce a lot of the administrative staff that was simply an expense by migrating to stronger technologies. All of our frontline and all of our production people were essential. But when we have multiple purchasing analysts and finance and assistants in finance, we are reducing our margin by significant amounts without having gains in productivity. All they were doing is duplicating data and moving data around, which was an added cost. Same with when we look at Buffington Homes, and this is specifically in their technology adoption from the drafting side of things. They have had huge gains from being able to increase the speed of plan design and integrating those plan designs within their purchasing and their materials list so that they can do pull-offs and cost estimates significantly faster than if they had been doing it in a legacy system through CAD files that then had to be transferred into an Excel file and then put out that way. Having their material list and their CAD platform completely integrated has made tremendous impacts on them. So looking at the four pillars that hold the stack together, and this is when I look at a technology stack, these are the layers that I'm thinking of. And it's the systems and what you buy. Those are the interfaces, if you will, of what we're familiar with and how we're using it. These are the Mark systems, the Novi Home, the Microsoft 365 platform, Salesforce, Lasso. All of those are the systems. Those are important because they allow you to make that connection. How am I going to build this? The processes, that's the internal business side of things. When we close a home, we send an email to the buyer. When a home is completed, we notify our warranty team. Depending on how your business operates and how your organization is set up, those processes will be unique to your business. And every system, as they're trying to appeal to a broad range of customers, being able to develop those custom processes within the systems you have chosen allows your business to drive the systems versus the other way around. And then building on those systems, it's identifying what that data is and what data is within that system and how it's treated. A perfect example that I like to look at is WIP. It seems like with most builders, when you ask how many homes do you currently have in production, depending on the department you ask, that number will be vastly different. If you ask somebody in finance, it's typically whether the home is started or not. As soon as we've taken a construction loan, that is a home in WIP. Whether the home is complete or not, if we are still paying interest on it, that is a home in WIP. Versus if you ask somebody in production, if there haven't been shovels in the ground or if that home has been complete, those are their bookends for a WIP. If you're looking at a salesperson, they may be looking at anything that's available to sell as WIP. And all of that can create these different numbers. So as an organization, when you're trying to plan that we want to reduce our homes in WIP, that can mean different things across the company. So having that clear data semantic model that identifies what's the difference between a sale and a contract, what's the difference between WIP, what are we talking about home completion versus ready to deliver. All of that has an important impact on how the business is driven forward. And then ultimately it's AI. And this is where I think a lot of builders are looking to go, but are lacking or not focusing on those first three pillars. And inevitably, like it says here on the slide, all this will do is amplify or fracture these systems, processes, and data you already have in place. I like to look at AI as a multiplier. If you have a strong process, it will amplify that and allow you to scale stronger. If you are just holding everything together, it will amplify that and it will make it feel like the whole thing is coming apart significantly faster. So now getting into the pillars and really looking at, well, what do we mean by the systems? And focusing on the failure mode, I think a lot of builders ultimately go, well, I want the best. The best tool is what we're going to implement. And inevitably, just chasing best of breed leads to sprawl because what is at best at one function may not integrate well into the next function. What integrates in well with that function may not tie into the rest of the system. So when every department is left to source their solutions independently, it's not being viewed as an organizational process, and it's being looked at what's good for this singular department. Where ultimately we want to pull things together and go, how do we allow the organization to grow? And that's where having that technology partner that's looking not just in your functional area, but is looking at, well, how does that information eventually get handed off from the financing side to the production side, or from vice versa, from the production into the financing? How are they able to communicate variances and purchase orders and payables and contract and work orders? How does all of that communicate through the system? So one of the things when you're auditing your system and looking at, does this align with my overall organization? We need to justify duplication if there is any. And I'm not saying an organization should have zero duplication of efforts or zero duplication of information. I think there is a strategic benefit to doing that in terms of data resiliency and backing up. But again, it's having that strategic viewpoint of, is this a necessity or is this necessary duplication or is this wasted effort? And is this a burden to our process or a burden to scaling up to a larger builder? And ultimately, if for all of the builders on this call, one of the main focuses is growth and trying to grow. We don't just want to maintain our size. So we want to focus on the systems that allow us to scale and allow us to grow. So realistically, what it looks like is, we've worked with builders where they're running HubSpot as their CRM, but they also want to fully integrate the ECI ecosystem. So they'll have Lasso and populate data into Lasso because that draws the contracts through. They may also be maintaining some of their client lists within Excel spreadsheets or all of their notes and activity within different spreadsheets. Well, all of that have differing integrations, and it allows for the teams to become fractured and for company leaders to fail to see the whole picture as to what is the health of our pipeline or what do we have forecasted moving forward. When we focus on processes and moving to processes, um, again, this comes down to the functional areas of mapping their own processes and looking at, you know, how do we grow forward? The trouble is that most of those most of the functional areas don't respect the boundaries of the limitations of their systems. Um, Selling a home and building it ultimately should be a continuous process, and it's how do we make those handoffs as minimal as possible? How do we make it feel like the second we gain a lead to the final day of their warranty, that entire process is mapped and moved slowly? And how do we identify all of the handoffs and all of the friction within that entire storyline, and how do we focus on reducing all of the friction and all of those issues? So to align the processes across an organization, one of the main thing is let's map that story out. Let's look at how your organization treats leads coming in. How do we move them through the pipeline and convert them to a sale? How do we keep them informed throughout the building process and buying process? How do we grow their trust as a customer and maintain their home throughout the warranty period? And how do we leave them as a raving fan and as a net promoter at the end of all of that so that they continue to grow our pipeline? What does that entire process look like? Where is the friction? And how does technology reduce some of that friction and aid in the visibility of that? Focusing on data now and moving to data, this is the one that builders underestimate the most. The failures are realistically are that the words mean something different across all of the slides or across all of the departments. If the same number on two different screens means something different, or if the same definition means something different or produces a different number, it creates inconsistencies in an organization, and it makes forecasting incredibly difficult. If you're not sure that we're going to have 10 closings versus 12 closings that month, that has a material impact on your cash flow and what the business is able to do in a growth mode. Obviously, growth mode is capitally intensive, and being able to maintain visibility and having confidence in those cash flows are incredibly important for builders, particularly in a slow market and particularly in growth mode, which is we're kind of experiencing both right now. So making sure we're focusing on the data and focusing on what can drive decisions and that we have the correct information really makes an impact on the success of an organization. So, and here's the everyday version. An owner asks a simple question: what's my margin by community? 3 reports come back from 3 different systems, and then the meeting isn't about margin anymore. It becomes an argument into whose system is right and who has the better report or who has the more accurate information. It's less about driving the business forward and more about validating the information. And that reduces the productivity and reduces the progress of a business. So our final pillar is really the AI side of things, and that is across every industry right now where everybody is focusing on going, and how do we implement that strategically? Because over the last month, as most headlines have suggested, that cost analysis is going to be incredibly important, and having a strategic, having the first 3 pillars developed in a strategic way allows you to implement AI in the most cost-effective and most productive manner possible. But right now, one of the main issues that we're finding is that every vendor in your stack is looking to ship AI right now. And inevitably, you end up with 5 co-pilots moving data across 5 different systems with 5 additional licensing fees and using about 10% of the functionality of each of those. And it's all about summarizing the same meetings, creating the same emails, 3 dashboards that all generate the same insight. And AI doesn't replace duplication. For most builders right now, it's amplifying it because we're finding so many different, whether it's your Firefly, your Copilot, your Gemini, Perplexity, all of these systems are now summarizing your workday or creating your schedule. And it creates a significant amount of duplication, even though they're designed to save an organization time and reduce that administrative effort. By doing what we're doing, we're actually duplicating a lot because we're indecisive into which program is best or which AI platform is best, when ultimately it's what problem is our organization trying to solve? How do we want AI to benefit our business, and what problem do we expect AI to solve? If we can identify what we're trying to solve first, rather than looking at the functionality of AI, we have a strategic, we can implement it more strategically than by simply going, well, this platform does this, that would be great for us. We want to identify where we're struggling and then go, how do we fix that? Which platform ties in with our current ecosystem that allows us to solve that specific problem? So here's an example of a connected system. Now, to say this is the best ecosystem or the right ecosystem, as we talked about at the beginning, there is no right ecosystem for the industry. There is simply the best ecosystem and the right ecosystem for your business and for your processes. But using this as an example, we can see that we've broken this down into the 4 pillars here between platforms, processes, data, and AI, and looking at what are the functional layers that we need to focus on within those. We know we need buyer engagement. We know we need design and operations, productivity or the build process. How do we communicate across people? And then how does everything tie together? So in this example, whether you're on HubSpot, Lasso, Salesforce, having that as your CRM and tying it together with Novihome as an engagement app allows you to sync all of that data and tie it into your customer relation management software and be able to track all of the activity together. Far too often I see builders going, well, we have Novihome, but the customer will call me or likes to send an email. So we have some builders that email, some builders don't like to use Novihome and will send text messages. Or they don't like to use Lasso or send emails through HubSpot, so they just call. All of that loses that data and visibility of the buyer engagement so that we have that progression and we can create that feedback loop of how well is our pipeline performing and how effective are our processes. By tying those together, we gain that visibility in. Same with from a design and operations standpoint. When we look at Hierarch and Mark systems or Buildertrend or Newstar, any of those systems together, tying those together and utilizing them as effectively as possible, rather than doing what most builders are doing, where they go, well, we have an ERP system and we have CAD software, but we're more familiar with Excel. So we export this out and then we transform the data within Excel, and then we import it back into another system. Well, all of that takes that additional effort, and it can create fractures within how accurate and how valid that data can be. Integrating them together, for those that are familiar with the Mark systems and Hierarch integration now, that is going to be a tremendous power if that's in your ecosystem, because now you're not having to export and migrate material lists out. Ideally, we're syncing that information together, and we can design floor plans at a significantly faster pace and identify if they're viable for a new product type. Do we know that it comes in at the right price? Well, we can develop those in days as opposed to weeks and waiting on feedback. And well, now I've got to send this out for bids. By being able to develop stuff where it's tied in with your material list, we can create the most cost-effective plans significantly faster. And then when we look at the productivity layer, all of those are operational functions to get task work done. But at the end of the day, every organization will still need collaboration. We still need to share information as to what's going on within the business. But then beyond just the organizational and operational functions, there's still all of the business service functions, whether that's HR, whether that's continuing education, whether that's company events or philanthropy. All of that still needs to continue for an organization to be successful. And if that takes a significant amount of effort from manual emails and from communication through text messages or through phone calls, and storing all of that auxiliary information is in separate silos, well, that slows down the auxiliary side of the business and has a tremendous impact on your general and administrative expenses. Whereas those should be, realistically, they should be a kind of a free and a benefit to the company and not be viewed as an expense. They should be helping to grow the company. So how do we make that as effective as possible? Almost every builder I talk to that is on 365 says we're on Teams. But then when you look through your communication platform, if you're on Teams, but most of your communication is done through text messages and email and phone calls, then you are giving up a significant amount of visibility for when we get to that fourth layer of AI to gain that context and to gain that organizational knowledge that, as we look at retrieval augmented generation through AI systems, has the tremendous ability to contextually ground your answers in organization. So when you say, what am I missing from the conversations over the past week? Well, if those conversations are spread out through multiple systems, you either have to go through the more complex task of finding ways to integrate text messages in with Copilot or Gemini or Claude, as well as your emails, as well as phone conversations and transcribing them, or doing it the efficient way of, we've agreed that strategically Microsoft 365 or Google Cloud or Slack or whatever your platform is how we're going to communicate. Now we have a strategic decision that says this is where all the communication lives. I just need to find an AI agent against this singular platform because all of our communication is in there. Then when we ask that singular platform, really quickly, we gain a full image of what's going on, or a full picture of what's going on within our organization, and it's not fractured data. So, and again, tying all of those together within this ecosystem, it's, if we can't sync all of those within just the operational layers of software, well, let's look at that integration layer and how do we leverage AI as effectively as possible? Because right now, every system is rolling out its own AI, and with that added cost, we're going to balloon the IT budget. It is far more cost effective to go, rather than leveraging one from our CRM and one from our ERP system and then one through Microsoft. How do we pull all of that into it, all of the information we have into a data lake, and leverage a single Copilot or leverage a single AI agent against our entire organizational tech stack? And that's where, when we find ways to connect all of that through our platform or through AWS or Google Cloud Platform, leveraging that single AI agent has tremendously more value than trying to leverage a single AI agent against a siloed portion of your organizational data. So looking at the sequencing and how we move through this, step one, audit the inventory. Audit every tool, every license, and every workflow. List everything you're using and look for duplications. Look for why do we have these and how much of each platform are we really using. Most builders will find that 20 to 30% of their IT spend or technology spend is on things they either forgot they had or aren't using effectively. Step two, we want to rationalize. As we have that list, go through it. It's the Marie Kondo effect, right? Does this bring me joy? But does this bring me value? Does this bring the organization value? Or do we have it because I like the fact that it rounded the corners for me or that it color matched slides for me? Versus we already have PowerPoint, but I liked Canva because it just made it look a little prettier. Well, we need to rationalize what is the purpose of each of these licenses. So that way, even as we change, we know the strategic reason behind each of the key platforms we have. And if there's no strategic reason behind it, then it makes it very easy to eliminate and go, this doesn't serve purpose to our organization and it doesn't provide value. Once you've gone through and consolidated down and found your critical software and your technology stack, then it becomes a question of how do we integrate these? And how do we integrate them effectively? It's less about we want to export the data from this system and load it into the next. We want to remove the human intervention. How do we make sure that if one system has a change in data, that it automatically flows through to the next one and the next one and the next one? Once they're integrated, governance and cybersecurity is still incredibly important. We want to make sure that we have ownership of our data and that we understand where our data is going and who has access to it. With that, it is all about the governance layer. We want to make sure we can see, we can audit. If somebody deletes a home, well, who deleted that home? What was the reason? When was it done? So that we can follow up and identify whether it was a failed process, whether there was a data leak. As we're looking at land deals, a lot of that is sensitive information, and it's how do we protect that? How do we make sure that we are keeping sensitive information secured? Once we have all of that done, that is when you want to start looking at augmentation and how do we multiply our strategic platform to scale with us as a growing business. Now that we know that only the correct people have access to only have access to the data they need, and all of our data is integrated, then when you load AI onto it, you're not risking your business to expose sensitive information of, hey AI, I need a list of all the employee social security numbers so that I can provide insurance. We would not want that to be surfaced, but far too often we're seeing builders jump straight into AI and try and solve those problems after the fact because they don't want to miss the bus and they're hearing so much about AI, want to jump in AI, let's just get the licenses and we'll figure out how it creates value. Well, it can create more risk and more cost to a business than spending the time to get that strategic implementation done, then leveraging AI to augment that. So the storm is not organizational. It's not about having more than one cloud. It's about sequencing that cloud together and identifying how do these fit together? How does everything integrate? And how do we prevent lightning from causing damage to our business when there is stuff exposed or when there is a cybersecurity attack? Because it's not if, it's when. But going through those first steps allows us to feel more secure that we have the proper grounding rod in, that we're not going to sacrifice our business because we had a single storm or we had a single issue. So now as we wrap up today and finalize this presentation, understand that as a builder, you are not alone. Every builder goes through this, whether you are a 20 closings a year builder that's just starting out and goes, well, I don't even have a technology stack. Well, for those builders, I say you're in the perfect opportunity to not have to rebuild things. Start from the beginning to develop that strategy of how do we get the processes in place? We may only need a single system or a small system at that time, but with the right processes in place and clearly identifying our data and what words mean and how we classify things allows you to grow from that 25 or 50 home builder into a 150 home builder and add those additional more complex and more powerful systems without having to redevelop and rethink all of your business processes because there's been so much strategy behind it. On the flip side of that, if you're a larger builder, if you're a 500 home builder or larger, we already have a lot of technology. We have plenty of stuff within here. We're not looking for more. We know we have our processes in place. Well, then how much manual effort is your organization currently going through to remove friction between your systems? And how do we eliminate that friction? I've said to many builders, if I can work myself out of a job, I will always have a job. And that is always my goal, is to remove myself from the business process. And as an IT team, that's what your organization needs to be focused on, is how do we remove the human intervention from anything that is not purely productive? If it's not building the home or selling the home or financing the home, if it's purely administrative, we need to find ways to reduce those costs so that we can continue to grow as a business. Now, one of the things where Shinn Group comes in, ultimately, as a small team or as a large team, we all have a lot on our plate right now. And without having that strategic partner to understand not only the technology side of things, but more particularly how technology works within the home building industry, makes such an impact. Of let's have that strategic partner that understands the complexities of project management on a project that lasts 3 to 4 months, or communicating with buyers and prospects on a process that's significantly longer than most manufacturing companies, and most products that people are buying do not have the same thought process, and it's not as major of a decision as a home buying process. So understanding all of those steps and understanding how to leverage technology to combat each of those friction areas and each of those handoffs, from land development to product design to sales pipeline, and integrating all of that in, is where we have the experience. We understand what makes great builders work well and how they've set up their technology stack. So let us work with your team to find those process maps, find those areas of improvement and ways that we can work with your team. We can help implement information and ultimately reduce the expense for your business and set your business up for that growth mode, for scalability, and to allow you to have that insight to make those decision, or to drive decisions. And with that, I want to thank you for joining this webinar, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Thomas. That was amazing. I love the fact that you are looking at answering business questions, business problems first before throwing technology at the wall and then just trying to figure it out. Really coming in with a plan, looking at what you as your organization are trying to solve, and then finding the technology that fits what you're trying to do instead of the other way around. So many times I hear everybody going, well, I just got this, I just got that, I just got that, and they don't know what they're doing. So it's awesome to hear that. And that was one of the things that I was so excited about having you, because I heard so much from Kevin and how he brought you into the team meetings, and you sat through each of the meetings and listened to how each of the different departments were talking about information and the things that they needed in order to make good decisions, and where things were falling through the cracks. And you were able to really kind of analyze what were the problems that this company was having, and how can we find really good solutions for them to fix it. So I'm really, really grateful to have you part of this. I do want to remind everybody and thank Monica's on. Actually, I saw Monica's on this call. So I want to thank ECI Mark Systems for supporting this webinar. I know they're a great partner, so I want to thank them very much for that. But also, before you all go, we have a few minutes left. If you have any questions, please throw them in the chat, and I'm happy to share them with Thomas to answer them. Kind of ironic that this is all about a tech storm, because last night and here near our office, we had an incredible lightning storm. And while I was in bed watching the beautiful lightning storm, a big lightning bolt, it like, you can see it. I know it hit the ground. I'm pretty sure it hit the ground somewhere around here. So we have exactly 7 more minutes until they shut our power down and restart our whole building. So we actually had them extend it for us for an additional half hour. So if anybody has any questions or any idea, anything they'd like to ask Thomas, now is a good time. I know some of you who are here with us today have already scheduled a 30-minute discovery call with him. So we're looking forward to seeing you, Brad. Thank you, Brad. We're going to see you a little bit later this afternoon. And if anybody's interested in that, please reach out. I'm happy to coordinate that call with you. Monica says, thank you. Great presentation. Brad's looking forward to talking to you. John says, thank you. Ben K says, thank you. Ben had a great presentation that he did in our builder group talking about AI. So it's a big deal for him to say thank you, Thomas, because he's been studying technology for a long time. So I'm glad, Ben, that you found some value in the webinar today. John wants to know, would builders need their own data center-like facilities?
No, absolutely not. So the great thing with being in the cloud is you're leveraging one of the hyperscalers solutions to maintain that. And realistically, that's where we're moving away from some of the on-prem servers that add to that complexity of how do we maintain, how do we upgrade that hardware. When you're not responsible for that, you can focus, or your IT team can focus on the development of solutions versus the maintenance of the infrastructure.
Great. Thank you, John. I hope that answered your question. Any other questions? Yes, he said thank you. Excellent. Well, I want to thank each and every one of you. I love doing webinars. So it's been, as Chuck and Emma have come into retirement, I've been moved on to other things. But this is truly where I enjoy spending my time with all of you, sharing great information and doing all this fun stuff. But don't forget, we also have our podcast. Thomas did a podcast with me. You can find that on our Shinn YouTube channel. And you can also find all of our podcasts on Apple, Audible, or Spotify. And you can get the links for that from our website at theshinngroup.com. So thank you guys. Thank you so much, Thomas. Thank you, every one of you, for joining us and spending the time with me today. I appreciate every single one of you and look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.